everyone. Welcome to Stumpy Grump Scale Speed Shop. This is Craig here coming at you with the 1971 Olds 442 from Revell Part 1. We have the parts out of the Dawn dishwater. I washed them, scrubbed them with a toothbrush, set them out to dry for a couple hours, and packed everything up into the box. Let it set for Sunday, because I don't build on Sundays. And here we are Monday morning. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start some of the sub-assemblies, get the sub-assemblies together before I prime it. But first I want to touch on the body a little bit. And I was kind of surprised to find out when I started deepening the panel lines here was that the panel lines on this were not as distinguished, I guess you could say, as I was expecting. I didn't really call that out when I was doing the inbox review, but a little bit shallow from the factory, and it was a little difficult actually deepening them. My tools jumped the groove a couple of times, and I made some scratches, and I had to sand them down and whatnot. So we'll see what they look like after primer. But I just wanted to touch on that real quick. So now we'll get started on the sub-assemblies, see what goes together here, the engine, all the engine parts, the intake, the heads and the valve covers and whatnot. Those all get painted the same color, so those are all going to go on at the same time. So that's what I'll be doing in this episode. And I just start by cutting the parts.
Okay, so I start by cutting the parts from the sprue.
My trusty sprue cutters.
Using my trusty sprue cutters here. Get close to the part as you're snipping it off. Try not to gouge the part as you're doing it. And you trim it with, at least I do, with the edge of my blade, or I'll use a sanding stick or some sandpaper. And now we get to the gluing part of it. Make sure everything lines up good. No gaps or anything like that. And for this part I use Tamiya extra thin cement. When I do parts like this that go together, or halves like this, I like to use this. It gets in there and uses that capillary action and melds the plastic together rather than just glues it together, you know what I mean? It holds it really good. And then I just clamp it together, set it aside. Same with the transmission. Once again, pieces like this and your seat backs and stuff like that, I like to do the Tamiya extra thin. I just feel like it gives it a better hold. Just dab it where the parts meet. Just go all around. And grab another clamp. And clamp it. Hold it, make sure everything's tight and no gaps form or anything like that, and set that aside. And now for parts like the oil pan that I'm doing right now, I use Bob Smith Industries Instacure, and I apply it with a toothpick. Just dab a little onto your toothpick here. And run it along the part. Don't need a lot. This is pretty good, pretty sticky stuff. Just make sure to keep it off your fingers. Don't need to be gluing your fingers together or to the part. That's never fun. Just hold it for about 5 or 10 seconds. And I use this for all the engine parts and most of the parts. Is What I use Bob Smith Industries Instacure for pretty much the rest of the build. Once again, you're applying it with a toothpick, being careful not to get any all over your fingers. And just put it on, push it down, hold it down for a few seconds. Gives you a pretty good strong hold. So here we show the parts getting ready for primer. There's the engine assembly all put together, held on by some wire so I can paint around it, and the transmission, and the seats. Okay, and for some of the smaller parts, like you see the intake or the exhaust manifolds here, I use an alligator clamp with a 6-inch wire attached to it, and I put it in my Tamiya part stand. You get this part stand and the one that holds the body in the same package. There's little indentations in there, and I just cut some pieces off from the sprue or the tree, attach them to the clamp, and put them on my stand. Pretty convenient little tool. And I keep my parts in a baggie that is labeled the color that they're going to be painted. Yes, I have to do that. Otherwise I'll forget and get all messed up.
Okay, so all the parts are in primer. Here you see the gray primered parts. You have your exhaust, the inner fenders, the interior portion, door panels, hood hinges, transmission, the engine, exhaust manifolds, intake manifold, steering linkage, spoiler parts, door mirrors, seats. And we have our little front hood piece. And the hood. And the body. Two coats. Gray Steiner primer with some white mixed in to lighten it just a little bit. Might have to sand a couple of spots. Makes this pretty smooth. Okay, so those are the gray parts. Okay, and here's everything in black. You have your firewall, you have your radiator, surrounded radiator, and radiator shroud. Wheel backs. Here's the chassis. Rear suspension pieces, cross member, rear end. Go to the interior pieces, the dash, steering wheel, console, pedals, visor, steering column. Yeah, I painted some parts in primer black and some other interior parts in gray. It's not going to matter in the grand scheme of things. I had extra gray, so I painted some of that stuff in with gray instead of wasting it or pouring it back in a bottle. Here's some engine parts and the air cleaner assembly. So everything's in primer that needs to be in primer, and starting tomorrow I'll probably start getting some things painted in regular paint colors or just leave them in primer for assembly. Maybe get the body painted Wednesday or Thursday too, we'll see. Okay, so I got the maroon sprayed on the 71 Olds 442 here, and I'm not sure if I'm feeling the color. I think it would come around with some clear on it. But the only issue really is that on the last coat, I went a little heavy. And if you can see it along the bottom, it kind of ran and built up a little bit. I haven't done that in quite a while, so I'm kind of disappointed with myself. So I think it's going to go into the stripper, and I'll probably take the weekend to decide on the color. I got a couple ideas that I'm working with on mixing some colors up to see if I can find something that just tickles my fancy. I'm just not feeling it. Wasn't feeling the Nassau blue, and now that I got the maroon on it, I'm not feeling that either. Yeah, I just was pretty excited about this build, but now I'm kind of at a bit of a color block here. So we'll take the weekend to figure it out and hopefully come up with something for the beginning of the week, so I can get back going on this one. Okay, so 3 hours in a vat of LA's Totally Awesome, and the parts are back to square one in bare plastic. That'll rub right off. And we will give them a bath in Dawn dish soap again, Dawn dishwater. And I should be able to throw a primer back on it tomorrow.